Hey, what is up, you guys? This is my January wrap up for 2020. I feel like January has been maybe the longest month ever. I feel like it's been January for about 3 years. Like when I was making the notes for this wrap up, my first book, I was like, I honestly feel like I read that so long ago. But hey, it's almost over. It's almost February. So before I get started, please consider subscribing and leaving a like and all that stuff, it really does help. So without any further ado, let's get started. The first novel that I read in 2020 was a Bronte novel. Obviously it was a classic, and I love the Bronte, so I think it was a good start to 2020. So I read The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, and this was released in 1848, and this was the first Anne Bronte book I read. I think she's only got two, and I really enjoyed it. So this is actually considered one of the first feminist novels, and it's written as a series of letters and diary entries, and the first half of the book has the narrator Gilbert Markham tell his friend about a widowed woman, Helen, who has just moved into their small community and with her son into the kind of run-down Wildfell Hall. So she quickly becomes a social outcast because rumours have been spread about her because she's very reclusive. She won't let her son out of her sight. People are saying that she's got an affair going with someone else. People are saying her husband's not really dead, all this other stuff. And Gilbert starts to fall in love with her, and she kind of has feelings back for him, but she's very, very strongly against anything happening between the two of them. So then the book switches to being Helen's diary, and we learn about how she has fled from her abusive alcoholic husband and the reasons that led to this decision. Because in the 1800s in England, this is like a big, big deal. Like not only is she breaking gender norms, but she's actually breaking the law as well by doing this. So this book was really interesting in its portrayal of like alcoholism and domestic abuse, which are both very, at the time, very, very taboo subjects, and still today are often taboo subjects as well. They're not things that people like to talk about, and this was just a really raw portrayal of the things that these women went through back then and today, and obviously men as well, but this is from a woman's point of view. So Helen goes against society's norms, like I said. She runs away from her husband, she breaks the law, she takes her son away. She sells art to make money, which again is like against the law back then, which is something I didn't know, because I looked up and it's seen as the woman is using what they call like materials purchased by the man, so they legally are owned by the man. So if she's selling the art to make money, that's stealing from her husband, is how I read it online, which is just like crazy to me. But yeah, so women weren't allowed to do this, and she is like, I need to make a living for me and my son, I need to get a better life for him. And Helen is just like a really strong character, and I really, really liked her. So if you do read this, I really strongly suggest doing like background research about not only the subjects of the novel, like for example the art thing, but also just like how the novel was perceived when it came out, because it was very criticized because of its raw portrayal of alcoholism and domestic abuse and things like that. And a lot of critics really didn't like it. A lot of like anti-feminist critics really hated the book, and Anne's own sister Charlotte Bronte actually refused for the book to be republished after Anne's death, which is just like crazy to me because she basically didn't like the novel, and she said it she just didn't like it. She thought it was bad. She didn't like the things that were portrayed in the book, and she didn't want Anne's memory to be tarnished by these like bad taboo subjects, which is like insane. So yeah, if you're going to read it, definitely look up a lot of the background stuff because it's really, really interesting. Next, I read The Darker Arts by Oscar de Muriel, published in 2019, and this was like a really exciting release for me. I was really looking forward to reading this. And it's the fifth book in the Frey and McGray series, which I have read books 2, 4 and 5, because at first when I picked up book 2 I didn't realise that it was a series, and my library doesn't have book 3 and it doesn't have book 1 anymore either, like it's been lost. So I read book 2 and I skipped to book 4 and now book 5, and they do work as like a standalone stories for the most part. There is like mentions and references to previous events throughout each novel, but each story does stand on its own, which is really good. So the series is about two Scottish detectives in the 1880s, and their cases often overlap with like paranormal stuff and like witchcraft and supernatural elements, which is really exciting. And this book is about Madame Katerina, who's been a background like recurring character in the series, and she is Maugray's friend and a trusty clairvoyant who has been accused of murder after a seance that she conducted ends with everyone involved except from her dying. So I still enjoyed this book, but it was definitely the weakest in the series out of the 3 I've read so far. And I don't know why. So I think the mystery just wasn't as intriguing, and the conclusion was it was a little convoluted. So at the very end, it has one of the detectives, I think it's Frey, he sits down and is basically explaining things to the reader. And I think if you have to do that, then it's not, I don't know, it's not as smart as maybe it should be. I feel like the reader should be able to kind of work it out on their own without having things explained directly to them. So that was a weak point for me. However, I really did like how Frey, one of the other detectives, was dealing with PTSD from the events of the last book in this one. I thought it was really interesting. It just added like an extra little element to the story and a little more dimension to his character. And overall, I would still really recommend it to fans of this series, but it was definitely the weakest so far. However, I'm still excited to read the next book and hopefully get my hands on books 1 and 3, because I really do want to read back and see what I've missed. So next I read the Twilight Saga, which if you don't know are by Stephenie Meyer, released in the 2000s, and there's Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn, and then a little like novella standalone story called The Second Short Life of Bree Tanner. And I made a whole video all about this series. It was my first time rereading it in 10 years, and not gonna lie, I loved it. Like I was expecting to go into it and find it like kind of cringy and stuff, which I did at points, but I did really enjoy it. So I made a whole video talking about it all and just like the funny parts, the cringy parts, and the parts that I loved. So please definitely check out that video. I will link it down below, and it's also the first video on my channel, so the last video I uploaded. So please go check that out and just see how much I secretly, not even a secret, it's an open secret now, like I love the Twilight series. So next I read another classic, and this was The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, which was released in 1897. And for some reason, I didn't know this was a H.G. Wells novel at first, but it was really good. So it follows a scientist who has made himself go invisible, and after failing to reverse it, he kind of goes mad. He starts acting violent, he's attacking people, he decides that he's going to start a reign of terror on the country. I think it's set in England, and like no one will be able to stop him, and he will be like a god basically. So I really liked it, like I said, and like a lot of other H.G. Wells books, well, okay, I've only read this, The Time Machine, and The War of the Worlds, but all of them, they read so incredibly modern. It's like actually surprising when you realise it's a classic, like especially War of the Worlds. I remember talking about that in my review, saying that it kept surprising me that the army and stuff was so bad in that book, because it read like a book that had been written today. So I was like, why are the army not doing this and this and this? And it's because it was written in like the 1800s. So that was really interesting again with this book. Like it just read really modern, but obviously it wasn't. It was written in the 1800s. I mean, the end of the 1800s, but still, it was a long time ago now. So this book was quite short, but it covered a lot of grounds, and there were some parts that were really tense, especially when the Invisible Man starts to, get really angry and go mad. You don't know what he's gonna do. And H.G. Wells has a great way of making everything sound like so scientifically accurate, even though it's not. Like I looked it up, and there's like articles basically explaining how it wouldn't work, but he makes it sound really scientifically accurate without sounding boring. And this just makes you really think about invisibility and like, is it possible? And also just like how bad it would actually be to be invisible. Like, there's a lot of things I'd never really thought about. For example, obviously he can't wear clothes, and so he's running around naked, and it's snowing outside, and he's got his bare foot on the ground. And then something which I thought was really interesting was obviously, so as he's barefoot, the mud and stuff is sticking to his feet. So slowly they start to actually be able to see his feet, because like there's just mud and dirt and blood and stuff like stuck to it. And I just thought that was like a little interesting element of invisibility that I'd never thought about. So yeah, definitely check this out if you're wanting like an easy classic, because it was definitely like a really short, simple, surprisingly modern read. And now for the grand event of the video. This is what everyone's been waiting on. I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, which is a YA fantasy released in 2018. So it follows Jude, a human girl who lives in the land of fairy with her sisters after her half-sister Vivian's father kills their parents and takes them all back to fairy with him. So there she's treated really badly by her peers because of the fact she's human. Her main bully is Prince Carden, who is a member of the royal family, obviously, and all Jude wants to do is prove herself, prove that just because she's human, she's not weak, and become a knight for the royal family. So I enjoyed this, but I do not understand why everyone was so obsessed with it, or like still is. Like, it was good, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like revolutionary, it didn't blow me away. So I'm going to mostly just talk about it with spoilers, because I feel like everyone has read it at this point. I feel like I'm the last person on the planet to read it. So spoiler warning, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So somehow, despite seeing like 1,000 people talk about this book, I never realised it was about fairies. I don't know if my brain just like shut off when I heard The Cruel Prince being mentioned, but like I was surprised that it was like about fairies. I thought it was just like a typical fantasy world, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I hadn't read anything about like fairies before. Not that they even have like, the fairies didn't seem that different from humans. Also, so they're fairies, but they're like cats as well. Like they have like cat ears and cat eyes and a tail and stuff. So I've struggled to like visualize like the characters, because in my head I was like visualizing like cat people, but fairies, I don't know. The world building, in my opinion, wasn't great. So it took me about halfway through the book before I really started to like get into the world and kind of like immerse myself in it. I was struggling for a while to like understand just different aspects of the world. So for example, like the royal children go to school with like the commoners. I suppose Jude isn't like a commoner because their dad is like or their kidnapper dad, Maddox, is like a general, but like the royal family, or the Prince Carden especially, like hates her, and his friends like hate her as well, and they're all kind of like royals as well. And I was just like, why are these royal children going to school with like these common human children? I just thought that was kind of weird. And also I could not get a grasp of like how big the world was, because when you're first just reading about like obviously like the school and stuff, I'm like, okay, so maybe the world is like so small that there's not enough, like they all just go to one school because there's not that many children. But then we learn about like other kingdoms like later on, and the world actually is like really big and huge. So I don't know, I just couldn't like get my head around like what the world was really like, and just different aspects like that. So I found the bullying scenes in this book really horrible, which I suppose like is a good thing. Like you're supposed to, but for some reason like they really got to me, especially the one where she's given the the apple and like loses her sense of control. Like they can just make her do whatever they want. I thought that was like quite horrible to read. And at this point, I was like, I'm just not enjoying this book. Like this was when I was like, this is kind of not my thing. But once Jude becomes a spy for Prince Dane, I did start to like it more. Although I really, the whole way through, didn't like Jude as a character. But because of the fact I didn't like her, that made it more interesting. Because normally you always like the main character. Not always, but most of the time. And because I didn't really like her, I was actually more interested, because I was like, okay, this is like different. So I suppose it's a good thing. I think that makes sense. I'm sure you know what I mean. Like Jude isn't a very likable character, but it's because she's not likable that you like her. I think you know what I'm trying to say. So I was not surprised when she kissed Carden later on. Like I knew it was building up to that. Oh my god, before that, okay, can I just say, Taryn? I don't like her. She's a man-stealing swear word. That was horrible. What's she done? Like they're twins, and she stole her twin's boyfriend. Or like she didn't even steal it because he was never hers. He was just like playing with Jude's mind, but Taryn knew about it. Like I just thought it was really horrible as well. But anyway, so when she kissed Carden later on, I was not surprised. Like we all knew it was coming, but I was surprised at the very, very end when they're doing the whole, scheme to stop, what's his name? Stop the bad one becoming the prince. And they actually made Carden king and not Oak. I was really surprised at that. I wasn't expecting that little twist, so that got to me, and that made me like more intrigued for the next book, because like, okay, like I'm kind of invested now. So overall, I did enjoy The Cruel Prince, but it did not live up to the hype that people on BookTube like give it. So like that's why I felt kind of more disappointed. See, if I went into this and not expected like the best book ever, I probably would have enjoyed it more. But because I was expecting so much, it kind of made me more critical in a way. But I definitely will still read the sequels. It's not a like high priority for me, but I do want to read them, and I am like invested in the story now. So overall, I did enjoy it. It just it wasn't the best book ever. It wasn't as good as people make it out to be. Overall, I read 8 books in January and enjoyed all of them to various degrees. I rated everything 4 or 5 stars. And the highlight for me was definitely rereading the Twilight Saga. It was really just fun. It was like, I feel like it's what you need in January. Like, I just needed like a nice throwback, especially like, 2020, start of a new decade. I was like, let's throw it back to 2010. It was just really fun. So thank you so much for watching, and please comment down below your thoughts on any of these books. I know that everyone's read The Cruel Prince to this point, and I feel like most people have read the Twilight Saga, but we've already spoken about that. So go watch my Twilight video if you haven't already. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, and I will see you later. Bye.